Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Michelle Jutrissa and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stamping Up. I'd just like to thank you today for joining me, and we're going to create a book or a photo album. This is something I haven't done for a couple of years, so I just thought I haven't done it for ages. I'd like to do one, and I want to use up some of the designer series paper that I've hoarded, and this is just a good way of doing it. So I'm going to flip my camera over. Now, as I said, I'm with Stamping Up. I'm an independent demonstrator. So if you're looking for a demonstrator here in Australia, by all means, contact me. If you're looking for a new catalogue, which will be released um, early next month, about the 2nd or the 4th of May, and you don't have a demonstrator, contact me and I can get one to you. So let me turn my camera down. Hi, Linny, how are you? And let's get started. Now, I am going to do this over a few weeks. I can't make this book all in one, but basically 1 hour of doing a live. So I have broken it up into a few components. But what I want to discuss with you first off is how do you choose what size book that you want to make or what size album you want to make. And we're making an album from scratch here. We're not taking one that's already pre-made and something like that and just altering it. We're actually going to make it from a basic cardstock right through. So we need to start off with what style of book you want. What photos are you going to put into it? What size are you going to make it? So I like to start with my photos. So I'm sort of working in some ways backwards. I'm not deciding on the size of the book and then going from there. I'm going to start with my photos. So I've just grabbed a couple of photos here that I have lying around. And the first thing I need to decide is whether I want my book to be photos in my book to be landscape or whether I'm going to want them to be predominantly portrait. I've decided for this book that I'm going to do, I want a landscape book because I can always cut a photo down if I want to put a smaller photo in portrait size or get them printed in a slightly smaller size, like a 4x6. Sorry, a 3x4 or 4x3. Now, your standard photos are a 4x6 size. So that's what I'm looking at. I've already decided I want to make this landscape. I've decided that I'm going to make it just a basic black book because then I can add whatever designer series paper I want to it, and the black will just highlight the colours and just make them look even brighter. So these aren't necessarily the photos I'm going to use. It's just using this just for an example. So I've got my scrap piece of paper here and I've already written a few things down. So my photo size I've decided is going to be a 4x6 and I'm going to make a landscape book. I'm then looking at the finished size of my my book that I want to have. So I want to be able to map my photos because I always love to map my photos. Make, again, it just adds a little bit extra to my photo. So I've decided that my finished book, I want to make it about an inch bigger than my actual photo. So my book is going to end up being 5x7 inches. Now, I normally work in centimeters, but I don't know what it is, probably because I've been a scrapbooker for many, many years, but I always revert back to inches when I'm talking about scrapbooking. So that's why we're doing inches here. So my finished size of my book is going to be 5x7 inches. I want my pages inside my book being a little bit smaller than that because we don't want them hanging outside the cover of our book. So I've decided I'm going to make my pages about 1/4 of an inch narrower than my actual cover. Now, the pages, you only need to take off 1/4 of an inch at your top, your bottom, and one side because we're not talking about photo size here, we're talking about book. Your page is going to go right to the spine of your book. So I've only taken off 1/4 of an inch for that. So at the moment, I'm looking at 4.5 inches by 6 5/8 of an inch. So that's the size roughly I wanted my pages. So this is just, you can change any of this. This is just sort of working it out rough what size. And you can also do, if you wanted to be able to have a book that you could put portrait or landscape, you can work by a 6x6 or a 7x7. It's a little bit harder because our papers are only A4 when you start getting too big, but you can use your 12 by 12 papers to make this. So if you have any questions, please stop me and ask me questions. I am looking quite regularly up at see what the comments are. I've also decided I want to put 5 pages in my book. I don't want to put too many because I've got to leave quite a bit of space in between each page, and that's so that if I want to build on the page, now this is not talking about how many photos I'm putting in the book, this is just how many pages I'm putting in the book. If I want to expand on my pages, and I'll show you what I mean by that later on, I need to leave space in between each pages for that to do. So I've only decided just to go 5 pages in this. I'm going to have pockets in the side, so I'm going to have 5 pockets as well. So again, I've got more area there to add more photos. So I've decided that my cardboard, my chipboard that I need, now the chipboard that I use, you can purchase chipboard from some suppliers, but I've actually kept a lot of the chipboard. When we get our specialty papers, a lot of them have got a chipboard in them to keep them nice and flat. I use that chipboard. You don't want one that's too thin. You do want something with a little bit of body in it. This one that I'm using today is probably about 2 to 3 mil in thickness. It's not overly thick, but so it's still reasonably easy to cut. Now I will tell you, you're better off cutting a chipboard with using a rotary blade or using a craft knife. You can use our trimmer for doing it. You will blunt your trimmer very quickly, and you need to go over that area quite a few times, and you could end up with a bit of furry edge, which is what I've happened there, and I've just gone along afterwards and trimmed it down. This is just a scrap left over. So your chipboard, easy to get hold of if you keep your chipboard from some of your specialty papers. So I'm going to cut my chipboard, my covers, and I need 2 of those. I need one for the front, one for the back, and I'm going to cut them at 5 by 7. I am going to put all these measurements and everything that I'm using for this eventually on my blog, so you will find it there eventually. My spine, now because I've decided that I want to have 5 pages, and I'm going to have about 1/2 inch in between each page. That's so then I can build on each page, and you can add elements and different things. So you could add flowers and all sorts of things. So you need space in between each page to have room for that. So you've really got to be thinking about what I'm going to be doing with my book. How am I going to decorate it? What am I going to be decorating it with, and how thick is that decoration? So, and that's another reason why I've gone only 5 pages, because the more area I add in between each page is making the spine of my page bigger. Because I've decided to go for 5 pages and I'm adding 1/2 inch between each page, my spine has ended up being 3 inches deep. So it's going to be quite a wide spine. And I probably wouldn't want to go any wider than that. Now you could do this in centimeters and put a centimeter between each one, but I think it's cutting it a little bit tight for some, for some people. So this is just, the rule of thumb that I'm working on here. So I've decided that I need my spine, which is going to be 3 inches wide by my 5 inches in depth. So what I've done is I've already cut my cardstock. So I've got my 2 pieces here, or my chipboard. I've got my 2 pieces of chipboard at my 5 by 7. I have a spine piece, which is my 3 by 5, and then I've got a scrap piece, and I'm going to need this to form a gap in between my spine and my front and backs, and I'll show you that as we put it together. Now, when I add, let me just remove some of this. When I put all these, this is the way my book's going to lay, like that. So I'm going to have a front and a back and my spine in the middle. It's actually getting quite wide this way. I don't think it quite reaches into the frame. There we go. So our cardstock is not that wide. Even our 12 by 12 isn't that wide. It's actually wider. So I've just had to decide where, when I cover this in my cardstock, where I'm going to have my join. You can have your join in the middle, or you can have your joins either side here. I've decided for this album, I'm going to do my joins here on the side because I don't want a lot of bulk in the middle there. And you'll see what I mean by all of this as we work along with this. So I've cut myself some cardstock, and I've just got all my notes all written down here, and I'm doing it all, as I said, in basic black. And I've decided that these pieces here, I'm going to cover my front and my back first. I've allowed an inch past either on three sides of this, and then I've decided where my my stop line is going to be here. So I've actually cut my chipboard, or sorry, my cardstock, for my covers 7 by 7. So let me just bring those in so you can see them. We don't need those photos anymore. So this is my cardstock here. So this piece here is going to sit roughly on there like that. And this one the same on there like that. So I'm not covering the whole piece of my chipboard, because when I cover my spine, which is going to be this piece here, it's going to go there, and then it's actually going to overlap with my chipboard. That's the plan. And sometimes plans sometimes they don't work. And if worst comes to worst, I've got to cut my spine piece a little bit bigger. So we're going to start off with covering our chipboard. So I hope so far, if you've got any questions, I hope so far you understand where I'm at. So I've cut those pieces a bit bigger. I've cut my spine piece here at 5 by 7. And then I'll talk about the other pieces when we get to it. So we're just going to start by covering our book. Now, tools that you're best to use is definitely need your bone folder. You most likely will need to take a pick tool, and you would mostly need your tear and tape. Now, this is not Stampin' Up! Tear and Tape, but I've got Stampin' Up! Tear and Tape to one side. This is just something I've had. I wouldn't recommend going for a cheap brand. I like this brand. It's one I get from good quality craft shops. You want something that's going to be fairly strong, and you will be using a lot of this. This is why I'm using this over my Stampin' Up! One at the moment, because I do want to use this up. So you can use your multi-purpose glue if you want to use your multi-purpose glue. The only problem I find with using that, if your glue oozes out, then you can end up with a very sticky mess. So by using a dry adhesive, then you're not going to have a lot of glue and everything sort of oozing out. So let's just get started, and we're going to start with these two side pieces here. So what I need to do is I need to put my tape runner on this. And I'm going to actually take this just to eyeball it, only from about there to there. Now you can run that actually quite close to your edge, and you can put on quite a bit of this. Now these sort of tapes, when you get them from other places, do come a lot wider, so you can get your tapes a lot wider than this. You could also actually with this use where is it? Just here. You could actually even use your adhesive strips for this, because what we're just doing here, now if I just cut this, I'm just going to roughly cut it for the moment. Just don't want to take my adhesive right to the edge of my chipboard. This will just give you a nice adhere, like all your cardstock will be nicely adhered to. And we're going to do this to both of our pieces of chipboard. So I'm going to take that one right to the edge. Since we've got it, we might as well use it. I probably could have cut that down a bit further. And I might just run, just eyeballing it, and I run a strip down through that center. Now, this is probably one of the more complicated styles of book that you can make. There are a lot out there that are a little bit simpler than this, and I may, at a later stage, make them and show you different. Whoops, sticking the wrong piece on my finger. Okay. So let's just peel off all our backing off this. Don't need that on there anymore. Make sure that's adhered nicely. Just going to give this a bit of a burnish just to make sure, because it's just pulling up a little bit. That's better. Yeah, I think I still like the tear and tape actually better than this adhesive. I think it's it doesn't quite come off 100% clean. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this on here. Just excuse my phone behind me. I've got to switch that off. And we're going to give that a good rub down onto there. Then we're going to take the other piece of our cardstock and we're going to do the same thing. Yeah, not 100% happy with the way that adhesive is coming off. Actually, that's not even coming off nicely at all. Let's just see if I can rub this down and get that to adhere a lot better. Yeah, it makes it a bit better, especially when you're using large areas of adhesive like that. And as I said before, things don't always go to plan, but that's okay. I think what I am going to do is just add a bit more of my tear and tape. So I do want that to adhere well. Now, hopefully by the end of 3 weeks, we'll have a completed album. So again, I'm just eyeballing it just an inch all the way around. And again, give that a good rub. So you can use your bone folder just to give that a really good burnish. So now what we need to do is fold all these sides in. Now we do have to trim our corners, and what I've done this morning is I've made myself just a little template here. So that's just a little template which is an inch wide, and then I've cut an angle there which is about 3 mil away from that corner. So all I'm going to do with that, somewhere on here, I've got my pencil, and I'm just going to use that just to give me a bit of a guide. And you just use your paper snips. And we're just going to trim away those corners. Of course, you don't need to use the guide. You could just eyeball that if you wanted to. But I was noticing on, I don't know whether it was Facebook or Instagram, somewhere on one of those social media, some business has come out with a plastic one of these. And I thought, well, that's just a pretty handy tool to have. So I decided to make myself one out of cardstock. You just need to have, you don't want that angle to be cut too close to your corner, because you don't want your chipboard to be shown through. Now I probably could make that just a little bit smaller. You just need just a couple of mil from that corner. So once we've done that, we're just going to grab our edges and just fold them up. Use your bone folder just to bring that all in and fold over those edges. We're just getting a little bit of a fold there. We're going to add some adhesive to that in a moment. And I like to do my sides first and then come back and do my end. Whoops, got a little bit of adhesive there. Oh, it's from that. That's okay. I'm just going to stick that on there temporarily. That will come off. Actually, it's that end. There we go. So it won't stick to my table anymore. And again, we're going to do this side as well. So just give it a really nice crisp fold on that cardstock, so you've got a nice finished edge. So once you've done that, you can grab your tear and tape again and add a row of that. Now you can add a couple of rows of this if you wish. If it's a good quality tape, it will actually hold. If you go and buy your tape from somewhere like the Reject Shop, no, it is not going to hold. So you do want to be using reasonably quality tape. And while I'm doing this, I'll do this side here as well, so it's ready to go. So I hope you'll come back and join me over the next few weeks as we continue with making this book. Just thought it was just something a little bit different, something I've been wanting to do for a little while, and just needed to use up some of that excess designer series paper we've all got now that our catalogue is finishing for the year. And remember, if you don't have a demonstrator and you are looking to purchase some Stampin' Up products, you can always contact me if you live here in Australia. I'm just going to peel that off. Both sides, I'm leaving that in for the moment. And then we're going to fold that over. And again, using your bone folder, just really burnish that down. Now, with this little corner here, don't know whether you can actually see it, but because we've cut that at an angle, this goes past. And what we've got to do is take the tip of your bone folder and run that in there and just crease that down a little bit. And that's so we get a nice fold over this corner here. So we're going to do the same with this. We're going to fold that over, give that a really good burnish. And again, just on this here, just push that in along that edge there, just on that edge of your chipboard. And it's just going to give you a really nice edge there. So then we can take these ends here off. I haven't folded this end as yet, so it's going to be a little bit tighter to fold. And we're just going to, again, bring that up, bring that over the top, and then fold that down. And just use that bone folder just to push all that down and push all those corners nice in so you get a nice square. So you should end up with a really nice square corners like that. And there's your front ready to go. So there's one. So let's just finish with this one. Again, I'm going to fold that edge over, give that a really good burnish, and then tuck that little corner in there so it's nice and square. Do the same on the other side. Just tuck that in. Now, if you are visiting here for the first time, please say hello. Let me know where you're from. It's always good to see new people. And it's great to see when people are visiting from around the world and here in Australia and everywhere. Okay, so again, just making sure that corner is nice and square. So there's our front and back covers. So now we need to work on our spine. So we'll pop those to the side and we'll bring in our spine. So again, I'm just going to pop some tearing tape on this. I think I've decided I don't like that other adhesive sheets for this, so I'm just going to add a couple of rows of tearing tape. You do need to have quite a bit of cardstock handy. Like I placed an order this morning for some more cardstock and now need to place another order for some more black because you will go through quite a few sheets of this making these albums. So before you start, I would at least looking at having as a minimum half a pack of cardstock because these do get cut up into some funny shapes, but don't throw away all your bits that you cut off because you can use them for hinges and different things as well. So we're going to pop this piece now in the center here. And we do want to try to get this as evenly as we possibly can. Now I'm just having a look for my ruler. My template piece there. That's not what I'm wanting. This is what I'm looking for. So I want to try to get at least an inch. Now this is where I'm hoping I've allowed enough cardstock. Okay, so I've got that there. I'd adhere that down. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay that over the top, and I haven't quite added enough. It's just going to meet. Normally I would like to see that overlapped. Okay, I think we're going to see if I can resurrect this. And I just need to cut this piece of black a little bit bigger, but I don't want to destroy my chipboard too much. This is what happens when you haven't made one of these for a little while. That's okay. Let's grab some more cardstock here. Best laid plans don't always necessarily work. Okay, so let's go back to the drawing board. Hi, Kylie. Hi, Marie. Now, I cut that piece for my spine, 5 by 7, and I think I probably should make this 6 by 7. Okay. So I'm going to take my longest measurement that way. And take my shortest one that way. So now this is 6 by 7. So before I had an inch either side of my chipboard, but now I'm actually going to make it that it's 1.5 inches bigger. And that's just so then I can get those two pieces to overlap nicely. And I'm going to make that my front. So let me grab my tear and tape again. Quickly catch up. Okay, so here's our cardstock. Let me make sure I've got it the right way around. So I want 7 going up and down. And this piece is going to end up being 1.5 inches in. Now I'm just using that just to make sure it's in. That's going to be better. So now when I pop this piece over that, I've got that overlap, which is what I'm looking for. Now I've got to put a gap in between. Let's get rid of all my rubbish here. I've got to put a gap in between my spine and my cover, and that's for when this gets folded up. There is room in between for the two to fold. So usually when you're working out how deep that gap is, it's got to be at least the thickness of your cardstock. So if you grab a piece of cardstock and bump that up together like that, that will give you a bit of a general idea of how much you want that gap to be. But first off, what we need to do is add some adhesive to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a piece along there and a couple of pieces here. Now this is basically a weaker point because I've got a join here. I'm not worrying so much about where my join is. Like I said, I could have had it down through the center because I am going to pop some designer series paper or something on the outside of this cover to decorate it. So this joint is going to eventually get hidden. So as I said, I want to have that spine. You could even take it, if I had another piece, double thickness, just to be on the safe side. Pop that there, and then that is going to butt. And what you want to try to do is also get so I haven't actually pushed anything down yet because I want to make sure that that is lined up there. I'll pop that in and just eyeball it, I think. And that looks about right. Then pop that down there. And then we'll repeat the process again with this other side. A piece of that just there. Again, just popping that there. Like 2 pieces of chipboard, which would be better if they were both the same size. And then that is going to go making sure all of that is all lined up nicely. Isn't quite in there. That looks about right there. Probably would have been easier if I had have used the longer ruler, but anyway, turn that over, grab your bone folder, and then again, just burnish all of that down really nicely. You can start to fold this up just very gently. Just give it a bit of a light press. Same with that, because that's basically where our hinge folds. And now we're going to pop some more of our tear and tape along these edges here. Now, of course, you could have done this spine piece in a different color if you wanted to highlight it. And if you do that, then you could have put that on first and then the covers on second. But as I said, I'm going to decorate this eventually with some designer series paper, so it's not going to be as noticeable. And hopefully that will be, won't be next week, probably the week after. Fold that up. Give that a good press with your fingers and then with your bone folder, just to make sure you get that nicely folded over there quite evenly. You want to try to get those as tight as you can there. And then you can just run your bone folder on that edge into that groove a little bit. Don't do it too hard at the moment, because what we need to do is soften those so then they will fold a lot better. I'm just going to actually give this a bit of a fold first. give that a good run, and then run that through there. Same with that one. And then give that just a gentle fold, just to sort of break those fibres a little bit. So then this starts getting used to folding. As I said, this is, and that's for 5 pages, so that's quite thick, but I do want a bit of space in between each of my pages. Okay, so there's the outside of my book. I've got my join there, and I've got my join there. So if I decide to leave my spine black, I can leave it just plain black. And then when I cut out my designer series paper, I can mat it and hide that join there. Hi Joan, how are you? So that's the start of our book. So now we need to do the spine of our book. So what I'm going back to my notes here, I wanted 5 pages, and my spine, it's going to be like it's not quite a concertina. This is my test piece that I did earlier. It's basically, we're going to fold it so then you have a spine piece like that, then a flat piece that's our 1/2 inch in between each page, and then fold it up like that again. So what I've done is I've cut my spine a little bit narrower again than this. Now remember, I said our page size was going to be 4.5 inches in depth. Well, I've made this piece 4 1/4 because this is going to sit inside. Now this is just a basic page. Basically what it is, it's just a hollow piece there, because remember I said I'm going to have pull out pieces in here, so you know, in my pocket. So I wanted a pocket on the side, so it's just a double-sided, it's like a tube that's been sealed up, but this piece here has to fit inside of that tube, so it's got to be narrower than my page. So my page width is 4.5, so my hinge width is only 4 1/4. So I've allowed approximately, now I've written all this down, I've allowed approximately 2 1/4 inches. Now remember, I'm working on an A4 piece of cardstock, so I was trying to get this to fit into an A4. I could make my hinges a little bit narrower, but I wanted to make sure I had plenty of area there for my page to adhere to. So that's why I've gone for 1/2 inch. And as I said, there's 1/2 inch between each page. So then I've got that much room to add extra pieces, extra ephemera, extra add-ons onto my page, whatever I want to do. It's the only way really I can explain it. So that's the size I wanted. So what I've allowed here is I've allowed 2.5 inches for my first score line, and then every one of these is 1/2 inch. So if I bring back my notes, and as I said, I will try to write this down in the next week or so and put it on my blog, but actually it's 2 1/4 inches. So I've started off with a piece of A4 cardstock, cut it 4 1/4 inches in width, and then I've come in 2 1/4 inches, and I'm scoring every 1/2 inch until I get to 9 1/4 inches. So I'm scoring it 2 1/4, 2 3/4, 3 1/4, 3 3/4, 4 1/4, 4 3/4, 5 1/4, and so on. And the last one I've scored is at 9 1/4 inches, and that will leave you roughly with another 2 1/4, maybe a bit more than 2 1/4 on the end. So that's what I've done on this piece here. So I've done all those scores. Let me get my book out of the road. And what we're going to do now is we're going to fold each one of these scores. So every second one is going to go up. So there's my first score line. It's going to go down, and my next one is going to go up. I'm sorry, this is being black. It is a little bit hard to see. So I'm forming like a mountain. Then I'm going to go across the next score line, and it's going to go down and up to form another mountain. So you go through and fold each one of those. So we're going to fold this piece up, that piece down to form a mountain. So it's sort of like a concertina, but we're leaving a gap in between each one, if that makes sense. So again, form a mountain. And you'll see what I mean when we come to adhere this together. Sometimes we do the wrong fold, but that's okay. So once you've got all that done and you can see that, we're going to flip it over and we're going to get that tear and tape again. We're going to use quite a bit of this, and we're going to run some tearing tape in the center. So that there, so there's my first score line, there's my second score line, and I'm going to put some tearing tape there, and that's going to adhere those two together. So I'm going to, that's one mountain. Then the next mountain, I'm going to put another. We're putting this on the inside of the mountain. That makes sense. Please, if it doesn't make sense, ask me. So that's that one. So basically we're putting it, first score line, we're going to do one. We're leaving two pieces, third score line, do one. Leave two, third, do one. Leave two, third, do one. Right along. Leave two, third, do one. Whoops. Make sure that's adhered down before you start peeling the backing off. Peel the backing off, and then we're going to fold it down like that. So there's our first hinge. So if I hold that like that, I hope you can see that. Take the next one off. Remember, we're leaving a space and we fold the next two together like that. So now we've got two. Take that next one off, leave a space, fold the next one. Take that one off, leave a space and fold the next one. If you're not sure, it is always good to do this on a piece of old cardstock or even a piece of copy paper, just so then you learn where the folds are and how it looks. So what you're going to end up with is a piece like that. Now at the moment that's wanting to curl. But what we need to do is flatten that out, and we're going to take our bone folder and we're going to run that along and burnish it. Then we're going to fold it back the other way and burnish it the other way. So what we're doing is we're giving a memory to our cardstock to fold in both directions. And I'm just doing that a couple of times on each one. Take the next one, I'm going to fold it down because we want those to move freely with our pages. You do it as many times as you think it needs to be done. Then we're going to do the next one. Give that a good burnish. Turn it over. And that's how our book pages are going to turn. And then our last one, turn it and burnish it a few times. So now we should have something that looks like that. And that's how we create our hinge. So I don't know how. Is that easier to see? Can you see that, Kylie and Joan? Okay. So that's going to be our hinge, which is going to go on the inside of our book in here. And that's so then our pages can then slip over those. So now what we need to do is we need to be able to make these so our pages can glue on it. And it's easy actually to do it at this point in time. So again, we're going to go back to our scoring tape. As I said, you do use a lot of this. And we're going to run a piece of scoring tape down each side of those hinges. Now I'm adhering this fairly close to that fold line, but I'm putting it both sides of those hinges. And that's so then next week when we come to make our pages and put our pages on, we've got something there to glue our pages to. Now, as I said, you can use your multi-purpose glue for this, which you wouldn't do until next week, but I find this is a lot easier. I don't end up with glue all over my pages and all over me. And by doing this now, our next step also becomes easier as well, because we're going to trim these a little bit. Now, as I said, this is probably one of the more complicated books to make, so I haven't started you off with an easy one. I've started off with a relatively difficult one. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to fold that and just angle cut those a little bit. Doesn't have to be too much of an angle. Just cut a bit of an angle off. Much easier to do after we've put our tear and tape on. And that's just so then when we put our pages on, it slips into those pockets that we've made really easily. They don't need to be all the same, but you don't need to overly angle them. We're just going to cut each one of those down a little bit. So there you go. They're now all ready for our pages to go on. But we need to pop this now into our book. So now what I'm going to do, grab that tearing tape again. We're going to pop some tearing tape on there, down that side of that fold, and then down in the middle of each one of these. Working with black, it makes it a little bit harder to sometimes to see. Another piece there. Piece there. And I'm going to add a bit more there. Sometimes you can't put enough of this on. You want to make sure everything is nice and secure, because you don't want to spend all this time making one of these books and then the whole lot falls apart. Now, I am going to add, because that's going to go to about there, I'm going to add another piece, but I'm just adding it into there. I'm not taking it all the way up to the top, because my piece isn't as wide as this piece here isn't as wide as this. So we're just making sure that's in there like that. Okay. So I'm going to start off with by taking these backings off here. I'm not taking all of them off at the moment, just those ones in the middle that forms part of our hinge. And what you want to do is you want to line this up. So you can draw it in with pencil if you want to, because you can always rub it off. If I can find my pencil amongst all this rubbish. So we've got 4 1/4, which our book is there. So if it's 5.5, I want to put a line probably at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. And I can just draw a little bit of a pencil line across there. And I'm only just doing it on the bottom. It's just giving me a straight line to work on so I don't get my pages all angled. I want to note where my channels are there, because these two come about 1/2 inch in from those channels. Oops, no, it's not 5/8 of an inch. It's actually going to be narrower than that. It's probably going to be about 3.5. Just a little bit unsure of adding that straight in. I just want to make sure. Believe it or not, it's about 1 centimetre. So let's see if we can put this in about 1 centimetre down. I'd say working in black wasn't the best thing to do. Okay, I've still got a bit of movement there. Haven't stuck that down firmly yet. I want to make sure it's nice and level at the top. Even. Once you're happy with that, you can get your bone folder and press all that down in the center. So those are all well adhered. So now once we've done that, we can take all these backings off. Lay that over the top. Now remember, we've got that groove in there. So what I want to do is see where it is there and there. Make a little bit of an indentation there. I haven't pushed any of this down yet. I'm putting my bone folder into that groove, and I'm just going to gently fold it. Just to give that, and just run that bone folder in there, just so then you can get that hinged. Now, once you're happy with that, then you can adhere that down. So I just want to rub that bone folder. Now, what you can do is get your point and just very, very gently just run it along, but don't dig it in. I have done this in the past where I've done it so hard that I've dug it in and I've dug a big hole into my hinge after doing all this work. So you just want to run that along, give that a good rub down. And I haven't done the other side yet. I'm just doing this side, so I'm just stretching that paper. So just stretching that paper out just very gently. So once you're happy with that, then we can go and remove the adhesive from the other side. It's always good to just, when you do your first one of these, just do it as a with the realization that you might make mistakes and you can rectify them. And your first one isn't going to be perfect. So again, I just want to get that into there. I haven't pushed this down yet. I'm just running that in there, and I'm just going to use my bone folder just to run into that groove. Bend that slightly up, and then press that down. Give that a really good burnish. Just give that a nice rub. As I said before, not digging in too deep. And then just give that a very gentle fold. So that's now starting to look like our book. And I really probably wouldn't go any more than that 3 inches. That's maximum. It becomes very, I did one once which was about another inch wider, and it became very, very floppy. So you don't want them becoming too floppy. You just want them to sit nicely. So now we're just going to I've got 2 pieces of cardstock here, which I've cut just to the right size to go in there. So again, here comes that tape. Probably used a good third of my roll so far. Now you could, even with this piece here, you could have this as a piece of designer series paper. I just thought I'd do it all in black. Gives me a good basis. I'm going to use the Hues of Happiness designer series paper because I've got a spare full pack of that to decorate this, and it was one of my favorite designer series papers from our last catalogue. So I thought, well, I'm going to use it up. Now, I don't know what photos I'm going to pop in this yet because it's very girly and I've only got boys, so it may even be gifted to my mother yet. I'm popping that in, and I've got around about 1/4 of an inch. Oops, it's not quite right. You know, probably would help. I haven't had a light on. I've got a new light in my room. My husband changed my light bulb to a daylight light bulb, and this room is now so nice and bright that I forget to put my overhead light on for my lives. But it's good. I can see probably a little bit better now. Okay, so that one is in there. Now we need to do the other side. So as I said before, just a little bit of a recap. When you're making one of these books, think about what photos you're going to put into it, what size you want to make it, how many pages you want to put in it. Just remembering that the more pages you put in, the wider your spine needs to be, and you don't need to have your spine too wide. We can add extra pages by making flaps and things, and adding pockets and all sorts of other things, which we'll go through next week. So then you can add more photos. Just because we're putting 5 pages doesn't mean it can only take 10 photos. Because we also want to leave areas for journaling and other things too, because it's very important if we're making an album and we want to put photos in it that we actually add some journaling to it, so we know that if anyone picks up our album, and if we're not around, they don't need to have to know. They can read what's going on in all those photos. So I'm just going to adhere that down. And there is the start of our album. So you can play with those hinges a little bit more just to bring that in a bit tighter. At this point, I'd be thinking about, okay, saying what photos am I going to use, what sort of pages I want to put in there, what sort of journaling I want to put in there. Another thing that you can think about is some people like to put a hole in here so they can add beads or ribbons or whatever. Do you want to do that, or do you want to just tie a bit of ribbon around the base there? Start thinking about what you want to decorate, how you want to decorate your book on the outside and the inside. Now, next week, what we're going to be looking at is our pages. Now, this is the page I showed you before. This is just a standard page. And these are going to be, we're going to make these, and they're going to slip on each one of those and adhere to that. And that's what's going to form our pages. That forms our pocket, so we can put a tag or something inside there. But we're also going to expand on these. This one here I was just playing with a little while ago, and so there's my pocket there. But this one here, I've added an extra page too. So when this one goes into my album, not in this color, will most likely be black. I was just playing around with some cardstock. That will go into there and slip on. I get that pocket in. That will slip into there. So when you have that one on there, you can open that up and you can have a photo there, you can have a photo there, you can have a photo there, and you can have photos inside there as well. So over this coming week, I will be thinking up lots of ideas of how we can make pages and what style of pages you can do. You can do them as simple as doing the same page on every one, or we can change things up a little bit. So I'll be coming up with a few more ideas for these pages. So next week in our live, what we'll be doing is adding pages onto our book. And then the week after that, we'll be looking at how we can decorate them. And in some respects, that actually takes the most time. So we're going to, I'd say, start thinking about now what designer series paper you want to work on if you want to make one of these with me, and start thinking about where you're going to put it all. So as I said, next week is going to be our making pages, and I'll come up with some more designs for pages and we'll pop them all into our book. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you will come back next week. Please let me know what you think by leaving a comment. It's always great to go back and see them. If you do want a catalogue, the Stampin' Up catalogue for the one that goes live very soon, next week, please let me know. I've got a few left here and I can post one out to you if you're looking for a demonstrator here in Australia. So again, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next week as we make the pages for our photo album. Bye for now. Have a great day.